And there we go. What's going on, folks? I am Scott Schertzen with Streampunk Cinema, Streampunk Entertainment, and Streampunk Sports. Hopefully joining me in a couple of minutes will be Mr. Obi Spencer, our Formula One specialist. But before we get to that, the true Formula One specialist in this case, you probably know him best as Goku in the critically acclaimed Dragon Ball Z Abridged series. Today, by the way, is National Goku Day, apparently, or Piccolo Day if you wish. But talking about Formula One, breaking down what happened with Miami, previewing the rest of the season, and giving his thoughts on Red Bull Racing, which I know he just has some thoughts on that. Lawrence Simpson, how the heck are you, man?
Hey, it's good to be back again. And actually, if I'm honest, the most I got out of that was that fact that my team won. Yeah, I'm a McLaren guy. And I have been for I'd always kind of liked McLaren, but I came over when Alonso came over in 2015. The best time to become a McLaren fan, right when what happened with them. But I've been through it all, and getting to see Lando Norris win and Oscar put on such a brilliant performance in the first half before Carlos got angry at the very least. But no, it was a really good Grand Prix. And actually, you know what? I really wasn't a big fan of the Miami circuit until they brought the sprint, because I felt like they needed to bring the sprint because Austin, everyone likes Austin. COTA is a really good, solid track in of itself. Vegas surprised a lot of people. The fact that it was really cold and it threw up some surprises. And we almost had a double Williams points finish before they messed up the safety car. And so therefore, I think people passed judgment on it until this year. So people are going like, okay, we'll wait until next year before we say if it sucks or not. So it didn't. I think it did more than enough to be able to justify another year without it being scorned. But Miami now with the sprint, okay, it works.
It's the funny thing with Miami. We talked about this shortly just a couple of minutes ago. Miami, partly, I think, because of, Formula One, but also obviously the Lionel Messi effect. You obviously in Europe, soccer well enough to know what an impact Messi has had over here in Miami. It was the most watched Formula One race here in U.S. history, and with Miami and everything that happened with, Verstappen and everything. Any thoughts in that department, first off?
Well, I think if this was to be the biggest ratings for a live US broadcast for F1, this was the best one to do it, to get people interested. Because, you got Max Verstappen. Yeah, sure, he was in the lead, but Oscar Piastri was able to keep him relatively close. And in the sprint, Leclerc was able to keep him relatively honest. As in, Max wasn't able to get away. As in, not get 10, 15, 20 seconds down the road. And there were many times when Oscar was faster, or at least was keeping up with Max, and he had to try. And then, of course, he hit the bollard.
That's all going to get
Yeah, and he thought he'd done front wing damage, but in reality, he'd just made a big gape in the floor. So that compromised his overall performance, but not by much, according to him. As in, he was very much just what was what he was kind of compromised, but he was not overly so. I mean, not enough to lose third place or anything, but it certainly didn't help him trying to catch the Lando, which of course he didn't. So I would say this was a good race, and it definitely showed that Miami can be good. And the way he got it with the sprint weekend, as well as the current sprint format, I would say, it's on to a winner. This is a really good format. Don't change it. I think it works.
And when you look at basically what's going on over there, obviously, like I said, with Miami, Verstappen still basically has the lead. It's funny because Red Bull at this point, Verstappen, Perez, and then basically everybody else underneath. So it's showing, despite everything and some of the animosity I think it's happening between them, that there is still such a powerhouse from the energy drink company.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't discount Red Bull now just because. I mean, technically, if you wanted to be pedantic, you could say, oh, well, the RB20 is now technically and statistically worse than the RB19. But realistically, I just feel like Adrian Newey made a really good point, the guy who helped design the Red Bull cars, in that you are reaching diminishing returns. Red Bull have reached the peak of what you can do with these types of cars, this configuration. and the other teams are either finding different ways or they've caught up. And this is kind of like what we got in 2021, a convergence of the rules where Red Bull finally caught up to Mercedes. And now this year, we're starting to get Ferrari and McLaren. They've caught up. They've caught up to the point where, sure, Max is still the fastest, but it's not by much. Like, Max Verstappen's going to have to use 2% of his power instead of 1%.
Well, yeah, it's funny because obviously he's been so dominant for so long with all of this, that do you feel like he can keep that up and keep that going?
Oh, yeah, I've got no doubts that he could. I mean, he's just like, he goes like, and this is kind of like what he wants, because in the sprint when he won, or no, I think he in the sprint qualifying, he got first, and he was just like, lol, where is everyone? Like, he thought that his qualifying performance was bad, but he still got pole. So he was like, what? Okay. And then in China, he drifted into the final corner, and it's like he admitted that he drifted in because he was bored. So yeah. But now I think Max will appreciate the fact that he's now got to try, and he'll have something interesting, and it's one of his best friends keeping him honest.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Spencer, how are you, lad?
I apologize for the delay. Very sorry about that. But I just heard you talking about Max.
Yeah, and Miami specifically. So
okay. Oh well, I've got to say Max did something amazing in Miami, to me, to be honest, which was he won my heart post race. I got to say, and I don't know everything we covered. Apologies to everyone for my lateness, but Max, is the best driver out there right now. But it felt like to me after the race, his comments about ifs and buts, and not refusing to let anyone take anything away from Lando, was that recognition that yes, I am the best guy out there now. So now it becomes part of my job to remain the best guy, but also to bring the rest of the sport up and not be too combative and too negative to everybody else. And listen, it was a huge turning point for me as a anyone but Max fan. At least I was like, okay, that was a respectable way of handling your post race. Also, his comments about taking out the cone were hysterical as well.
Oh yeah, it's his Dutch straightforwardness, as in he's blunt to the point. And if you saw the full clip, that the question the journalist asked Lando about the whole safety car, he asked that Max. And it made you just see Lando actually sort of doubting himself, like say, yeah, I would have had to take 2 Ferraris, Oscar, Sergio. I don't think I would have been able to do it. And that's when Max stepped in and was like, came to his aid. And as you say, he was like, no, don't take this away from my friend. He did it. I couldn't have caught up. So, it just goes to show he's a decent guy. And he's just like, he's got friends. He looks out for people. You can't call Max Verstappen evil. You could call him blunt, sharp, direct.
You can hate him for what he does on the track, but
yeah, I mean, he doesn't give you any BS, honestly.
But it's funny because one of the comments that just came in here was, well, aside from the fact that it's Kentucky Derby with cars, but it was an absolute who's who, which again, this side of the shore, we've never really had when it comes to Formula One before. I mean, LeBron was there, Mahomes was there, Ed Sheeran was there, and you would have never seen that a couple of years ago.
I think you would have done, but you would have had to pay them a lot more. But I did respect, I think one of the standout ones where I'm thinking, okay, you've earned my respect, Camilla Cabello. So making the most of the meme currently going out of a kid shouting Leclerc, and it's like, and she was doing it. She was trying to find Charles, and then everyone, did you find him? And he went, she went, I did. So she was in the Ferrari garage with Charles, and I'm thinking, okay, I like you, Camilla. You did a good job. You've actually shown an interest, and yeah, and then I think lots of celebrities now have been clued into Martin Brundle's grid walk. As in, like, hey, if you see Martin Brundle, you either run or just be prepared. Like, and I think I've seen some people online saying, okay, if you want to any celebrity, if you want to if you want to come on the grid, name 5 drivers who are on the grid.
Okay, fair. At least show you have some knowledge of the sport.
Yeah.
Not use it as an Instagram event.
Yes.
Instagram only event. Do 10 minutes, 15 minutes of research. It is a fair criticism. If you were at any other event, you would be expected to answer questions about the event. So be prepared to answer questions about the event. You don't have to be a huge fan, but you should know what you're doing. You know where you're at.
Otherwise, and also if you do, then you get more out of it.
And it's funny because sometimes you get, obviously I think some of these guys were legit racing fans. I mean, I would have to assume like LeBron and Patrick Mahomes or Kelsey, probably Travis Kelsey, all these guys who are A-list here in the States, they probably know their sports pretty well, even if it's sports they're not playing. But yeah, sometimes I think you get these people that just show up because it's a PR event. Their team was like, you need to be seen at this event because X, Y, and Z are going to be there and you need to keep up. It waters down the appreciation of it a little bit, I think, on this side.
Yes.
But it's funny because also let me pull, if you look at what the ratings are right now, let me pull that up real quick.
It was the highest rated race in America in quite some time, the Miami GP. But I mean, it was a great race weekend for fans too. I mean, everything was great. The sprint was great with controversy in the opening turn. Max not winning was great for the Never Max group or anyone but Max group. Max's reaction was great. If anyone to win, Lando winning was fantastic. And then you had racing that I imagine you haven't seen since like 1970 in the sprint with Magnussen. Like, no, you're not going to pass me. You're not going to pass me. Give you all the penalty points in the world. You're not passing me. My team's going to win. That was crazy, dangerous, fun to watch racing. I felt, obviously you got to stop that given the world that we live in today with safety issues, but it was fun to watch.
Oops, sorry. That hit the wrong button. There we go. But it's funny because also when you look at like the overall standings and everything like that, here in the States, it's like all the way down to 21 is before we finally get someone, the US is like, we have somebody here too.
Oh, poor Logan.
I know.
And the fact he's a Fort Lauderdale boy. That's the thing. I've got a bad feeling about what's happening with him, and I feel like this year he's had his back up against the wall in that there's not really much he can do because third race comes along, he comes around to Melbourne through no fault of his own. He's basically told, right, you got to give up your car, and he said it. He said so himself that it was probably the worst moment of his career. That he had to give up his car for Albon. He wasn't the one that crashed it. Then in Suzuka, he gets the repaired chassis, which by default is heavier. And it can easily be up to like maybe a third of a tenth. It's enough to make a difference. And then he has a little accident, but he's able to keep it on the road. And then in Suzuka, he's on course for maybe a chance for 10th or 11th, which would have been respectable for a Williams right now. But then all the pit stop kerfuffle, which resulted in Tsunoda getting his 10th place at his home track, meant that Logan fell down the order and then he fell off the track. So you just felt like he was up against it. And of course, Albon takes the chassis that he had and damages it. Another one. And then, so you feel like Albon, not even Alex can get much of that out of that Williams car right now. So even he's struggling. How do you expect Logan to do what he can? And then he arrives at Miami, his home track. He doesn't really seem all that happy. He doesn't have a special helmet design for his home race. And he just looked overly dejected. And then in the sprint, he gets 10th, which is incredibly respectable. And he finishes ahead of Lewis Hamilton. I mean, granted, there was a 20-second penalty. But then he gets punted off by Magnussen. And one of the first things he asked the people on the radio, after he bit his tongue as well, but he went, did I do something wrong? So you feel like, my God, the team do not support him right now. And he's trying his best. And everyone keeps saying, oh, Logan's costing them money. No, according to the Destructors Championship, an unofficial estimation about damage, Logan is relatively modest. Albon's cost the team over $2 million so far. Logan, maybe just over $500,000 or something, but far less than Albon, Stroll, like.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Scott sent me the vid from today. Speaking of Stroll, I mean that was you did your best to be polite.
I was going to think. What did you call Stroll today in today's vid?
Which one?
Today was you were the least the one I saw was you were talking about RB Carb's chances, Tsunoda's Tsunoda's ascension a little bit, and because they got 2 drivers over at RB versus
one driver and Lance Stroll.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
it's mainly for the fact that it's not saying about skill. It's just I don't think he has the drive, as in he has the desire to continue. You just feel like he's just tapping in his card and going like, right, okay, I am here because I am contractually obliged to be here. And I don't think he's having fun. And also, this team, I mean, the reason why I made this V-Carb, the V-Carb versus Aston, I mean, before Miami, you wouldn't have talked about it at all. There would have been a clear divide between Red Bull to Aston Martin and then Racing Bulls down to Alpine, or now Sauber, because Alpine finally scored a point. But the point is, though, is that before then, you wouldn't have given it a second thought. You think, oh, Aston Martin, they're guaranteed 5th place. Now, though, V-Carb score 10 more points than Aston Martin in one weekend. And you think, oh, okay, this could be worth discussing. Like you can discuss the topic instead of before, because now Ricciardo has finally scored some points. And I don't care what people say about the race. You can't take the sprint away, where you ended up in 4th place. He qualified well. He kept it. He kept a Ferrari behind him. That is something to commend.
Do you think that Stroll's laziness, as if you would, versus what we're seeing from Tsunoda and Ricciardo, I mean, might just come down to security? I mean, Stroll's not getting fired unless he wants to leave, no matter what.
I don't know about that, actually.
Really?
I feel like
Dad will...
Well, there are talks apparently there are early talks about Papa Stroll selling a portion of the team to outside investors. Probably and they're estimating that Aston Martin's worth between 1.1 and 1.3 billion dollars. And that could be worth a few hundred mil. And Aston Martin, the Gonda, the car maker, is in quite a lot of debt. So this could be easily a way to drum up some cash to help prop up the car division, that's in the road cars. But at the same time, it's Papa Stroll relinquishing control. And therefore, that means you have more people who have a vested interest in the success of the team. And also, what you've got to consider for 2026, Honda are coming in as a works partner, they're replacing what they're doing with Red Bull. Aramco is really investing heavily in sustainable fuels for 2026. And that is something really important. Aramco, there have been Saudi ventures that tried to buy the sport a few years ago. But so now, if they're realizing, well, they can't buy the sport, buy yourself into a team or partner up with a team so you can win. So Aramco and Honda have big ideas. And if they're looking right now at a team that has facilities that would make McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull go, not bad at all. That looks really nifty. As in, like, really impressive facilities, brand new wind tunnels and what have you. And they can barely hang on to 5th. There's something wrong. And it's most likely Lance. Nothing wrong with Fernando. Fernando is basically going to be coming into work on a Zimmer, practically. He's committed the rest of his life to Aston Martin.
Right.
And even after he stops racing, he's going to be involved in some way. But with Lance, you just don't know. And I'm not really talking about his skill. I'm talking about his commitment. That's the thing. That's what I stressed in today's video. As in, I'm going like, well, look, we've all talked about his skill. We just need to talk about his commitment and his place within the team if they are really looking to trouble the top. Right now, that lineup does not scream front runner. It screams midfield.
So I'm gonna change here. I know we came in. We talked about Sargent as an American. We're talking about new teams as an American. Listen, I ain't gonna lie. I'm begging that we get the 11th team and it be Andretti. Where are you coming in on Andretti figuring out how to get in as that 11th team?
Oh, I've been talking about this nonstop. I want Andretti in.
Nice.
I want Andretti in because I feel like the FIA have already approved them. As in, what more do they need to do? They don't need to do anymore. They've shown that they are capable of entering. They have pedigree in multiple disciplines of sport. even Formula E, their application. I think one of their drivers even won the title last year, as in the Andretti and the partner and who they partnered up with. But you just got to think that they've done everything possible, and still that wasn't enough. And now you get the House Judiciary Committee wading in and going, hey, what you're doing here, Liberty Media, which is an American company on the American stock exchanges, you are potentially flirting with the idea of antitrust lawsuits. So they're asking, so the committee, and I mean, I don't want to really get into politics, but this is something, yeah, at least this is something, well, this is about American jobs. And I should have seen this coming, because the representative from Indiana is on the committee. And she's been one of the most vocal people right there with Mario Andretti at Capitol Hill. So you're thinking, oh, of course it would have gotten to this bit. But I just feel like Formula One's got to take this seriously, or else they're going to get the Department of Justice involved. And this is going to like get even worse. I mean, already it's a PR disaster, because this has gotten onto mainstream news. It's on NBC, ABC, CBS. It's on all the American news stations about Andretti being rejected, even though the governing body has said you're good to go, that there's a disconnect. And I think that Andretti will get in, that they will find a way to negotiate. I mean, this is probably not the way that Mario Andretti wanted to get into F1. And you think that the guy who is a 1978 F1 champion, and
the lineage of that entire family,
and the Andretti family is probably one of the most storied in American history, in modern Formula One history. Isn't that enough? And you just feel like you feel like F1's becoming a closed league, that the only way you can get in is through dead man's boots or rich man's pockets. So, I mean, Andretti, they will get in. There are going to be either discussions that they'll renegotiate, and also it's a big affront to General Motors as well, because GM are chomping at the bit to take a peg or two out from Ford, who are coming in. They're looking at Ford and going like, oh yeah, okay, all right, we can take you, because we got Red Bull Ford powertrains, Ford working on the battery for the Red Bull powertrain, obviously. And now General Motors wants to come in with Andretti, with their Cadillac division, which is doing really well in IMSA and hypercars, and well in Le Mans as well. You just feel like, okay, all right, this could be good. But I don't see the problem in letting them in, honestly. We used to have 11 teams for the longest time. What's the problem?
I mean, yeah, like I said, American biased on that one for me. But, someone doing better than Haas would be nice. Although Haas has been entertaining this year for sure.
I would say that Haas this year is Ayo Komatsu. He's very much, he's done well. As in, like, he's cleaned up a lot of the messes from Gunther. But have you seen that Gunther's actually now suing Haas?
Yes. So, yeah. And so to me, so my favorite livery, I don't know if it's my favorite team, is Alpine. I just love when they get pink out there. I enjoy that. And last year, right, they were at the top of the midfield, and this year they're gone. What happened?
I just think it was just a lack of understanding and just going in the wrong direction. And of course, weight, because that seems to be the big issue. That seems to be a very major concern. I mean, they're addressing their weight concerns, because apparently they were talking that they were 10 kilos overweight. And apparently that's potentially 1 kilo is worth 0.3 of a second a lap. So they were potentially losing a second almost from just weight problems. But now they seem to have addressed that. And as a result of that, it means that maybe now at least they're not at the back. And also, I just feel like they're following the McLaren school of thought, because they've changed the way their technical directorship is structured to what McLaren's is, as in they have 3 different figureheads. They actually pilfered a former McLaren employee. So you just feel like they're just copying McLaren now. And okay. And they're upgrading relatively quickly, not as successfully as McLaren, but they've at least scored a point now. And that was more than could be said at the first race.
In this case, basically, okay, question. I think you kind of half answered this already, but selecting for Formula One, who do you know or how much money you got?
Selecting the members of a team. Well, yeah, basically, because there is such a thing called a cost cap. So the cost cap doesn't affect driver salaries. It only affects the development of the car and the top 3 earning employees of the company. Usually that's like the team principal, the technical director, and the director of sport or something like that. So that's usually the case. But primarily, if you can get a good driver, that helps. But sometimes it's down to a car driver combination.
But all right, so looking ahead a little bit, questions pop up in the chat, on anything. We'll address it more as they come in. But looking ahead a little bit to Italy, actually, no, before we get to that, I want to ask this one. Oliver Behrman obviously got a lot of cred because he had his first start. Let's go with that one first. The kid's 18 in this case. Obviously, it's a big moment for him. He had his first race. What are your thoughts about him, and where do you see him in, say, 4, 5, 10 years?
I see for the foreseeable future, he's going to be doing multiple free practice 1 sessions for Haas this year. He's doing 6 sessions. 6. That's huge. That usually you get the teams, they are obliged to run 2 young drivers in FP1 sessions. Usually you get maybe a team doing it at some random point in the year, and then practically everyone does it at Abu Dhabi to just tick the box. Then they go, oh, fine, okay. And I remember Zach Crawford and Ijik Hadjar were testing the Red Bull cars, and they were really sad because they were like, oh, we was really scared. We couldn't fully tap the drive the car because we didn't want to break it. Even though all of the titles have been wrapped up. But Oliver Behrman, I feel like he's going to be at Haas next year, no doubt, because Komatsu, the team principal, has said, look, I don't really care too much what he does in F2 because, Prema right now they're not doing so well. So I don't care what he does. He's got the super license points. He's our reserve driver. So yeah, he's going to be there next year because Hulkenberg's gone. Magnussen, it'll be a miracle if he stays for another year, but I feel like Komatsu will probably get rid of Magnussen because it's another remnant of the Steiner era that probably Haas wants to expunge from their history now after what's happened. I feel like Behrman, I feel like he will end up at Ferrari if he keeps things up because Haas has become the Ferrari B team at this point. And Gene Haas doesn't really seem a problem with that, to go, let's make the most of our Ferrari partnership. It saves money. I mean, heck, they've even got an office. They've got a cubicle in Maranello. So they've got that. And to be fair, that's something that Steiner made happen. You've got to give him his credit there. If there's one thing Steiner was really good was setting things up and a manager of people. Manager of a team, though, at the beginning, yes, but when things change, not so much. But as for Behrman, I feel like in a few years' time, he will end up at Ferrari. He will be there, depending on what happens with Hamilton. Because if Lewis Hamilton, he comes around and he goes to Ferrari, he has a great few years. If he gets his 8th title there, I imagine he'll call it quits. As in, he'll get the title, and that's what he wanted to do in 2021. I bet if he got the title in 2021, he probably would have retired there and then. Because he would have done his 8th title, that's it. He would have taken a leaf out of Rosberg's book and gone, okay, I've done everything I wanted to do, I'm done. And then he'll do that. He'll get that first title. He'll get that 1 title for Ferrari, give him what they've been craving for since Kimi Räikkönen, and then call it a day. And then when that happens, Behrman will get the call up to replace him.
Nice. So you're expecting good things in the future, then? Bottom line.
I mean, you got to look. I mean, you got to look at Jeddah, man. I mean, yeah, he comes in with barely any notice. He does FP3 qualifying, and he gets points, and that's remarkable. I mean, there are some, people are saying, oh, it's only because he was in the 2nd fastest car. Yeah, that's true. But you look at the lap times, and Behrman was catching up with Leclerc over the course of the race. And by the end of the race, he wasn't that far behind. So he was quick to learn. So I feel like he is destined to be in F1. It's going to be at the back with Haas, but I think he's okay with that. And I think Komatsu, this is the thing. This is something I learned with the whole Piastri, Alpine, McLaren situation. If the team wants you badly, that is huge. To know that the team wants you and needs you at that team, that's a big deal.
Sure.
And that could easily, and it makes you feel loved. That's what Piastri feels like. Both Norris and Piastri, right now, they're going to be at McLaren for the foreseeable future. Right now, with the fact that McLaren has finally gotten to the top, why would they leave?
Are there any bad feelings between drivers of a team if the backup finishes better than the main driver? Depends a little bit on the PR side of it sometimes. You know, who you're trying to push in some ways.
Well, I think in the case of Behrman, it doesn't really make much of an impact with the it doesn't make much of an impact. I mean, Behrman was able to score points, but he wasn't at the top. He wasn't threatening fifth, fourth, third. And he can take a crumb of comfort in the fact that he was expecting Hamilton to catch him up, but he didn't, as in he was able to hold him off. And yeah, I think it's just validation. It's a confidence booster that, you know, he could, if he were thrust into a car, he didn't crash, he didn't make any silly mistakes, and he just had a quiet race, and that's something to be proud of.
Nice. Obi, you got anything?
Oh, I mean, I know you just touched on Imola a little bit. Now, I have not read enough articles to know, so I'm asking. I'm under the impression that Ricciardo isn't starting at Imola. Is that correct? And do we know why that is?
Ricciardo isn't starting?
Okay, so if you're as confused as I am, that's what we call like just reading the headline and missing the article on my part, which is fine. It didn't seem like it made sense, but I thought I had, like I said, caught that headline. But we'll let that go onto that. So Scott did talk a little silly season, and silly season started super early because of Hamilton signing. But you also mentioned earlier the driver in the car, and everything you hear about that Red Bull is that it's built for Max, and Max has it built around him, and that does make it hard for a second driver. Because if you don't like a pointy end like Max does, you're in trouble. Who do you like to take that seat if they do drop Perez at the end of the season? And then the follow-up question, of course, is who do you like moving into the Mercedes?
Quite frankly, I'll get that out of the way. Mercedes, I frankly want Mick Schumacher in that car. I want Mick in that car because I feel like he's a good. I feel like he is dependable and he's done his job as being a reserve driver. I feel like he deserves a couple of years alongside George because George knows what he can do, and Mick needs to prove what he can do in the car, because a lot of the hate that Mick gets is purely manifested from Steiner supporters, because the team made it very clear that they blamed Mick for all of the problems that they had with accidents. Gunther was extremely vocal about it. He did not mince his words. And therefore, it manifested this negativity towards the driver that he crashes a lot. Yeah, he did crash a lot, but this was with the car. But by the time he managed to calm down, the car had completely fallen off, and it was not the fifth or sixth fastest car. It was the 8th or 9th fastest car. So there wasn't really much they could do. Magnussen got that fluke Brazil pole, you know, because of the weather, but Mick wasn't really able to make anything out of it. Not even Magnussen could. So it was too late for Mick to do anything. Yeah, he should have been a bit more careful, but he had to hustle that car. I just feel like he needs that McLaren's and Mercedes seat to, although I'm not going to lie, I have seen him test McLarens, and that's just been trippy. Because the last time I saw a McLaren helmet in a McLaren car was when DC needed a helmet and Michael let him borrow one of his. That was weird. But in regards to the Red Bull seat, I want Checo next year. I ideally think Checo's done enough to keep it, and especially if he can just hold his own. One thing that's been improved, he did a dive bomb and he didn't take anyone out or himself. So it's like, hey, he did well enough and he still scored. I'm thinking, you know what? Okay, fine. It was fine, but I think he needs to step it up. But I feel like he has a good mindset. He's not trying to go after Max. He seems to be using Max as a benchmark, and he's like, hey, if I can at least keep up with Max, who's one of the best drivers of this generation, that's not bad. I'll take that. And okay, so I personally think Checo's done enough to warrant one more year. But for chaos' sake, just to see what will happen, Carlos in there next to Max, reliving what happened in 2015 and 16 for the beginning. I'd love that to happen. If it's not enough for Checo, Carlos and Max, that'd be fun. That would be immense. I mean, Verstappen, he doesn't care whose his teammate is, which is good, and also a bit of a sad thing with Checo. So Checo hasn't got Max to back him up.
Right.
it's not like a Hamilton Bottas situation where Matt Lewis is going like, "Oh, Valtteri's one of the best teammates I've ever had, man. Oh, don't get rid of him. I think he's great." And to be fair and give Toto his credit, at the end of his tenure, they say, "Well, we have to obviously look at Valtteri. He's actually done his really part for Mercedes, and we want to make sure that he actually has a seat to go to. We don't want to abandon him." So we done a deal with Fred, who's actually my bestie at Alfa Romeo, so we make sure that he's got a good seat where he can lead the team. So give him his due. He was able to make sure that Bottas had somewhere to go. That was the main thing. Nice. But realistically, in my heart of hearts, Sergio should keep it one more year.
Nice.
I think that's a fair assessment. But then in the what we just juggled, seeing sights at a midfielder back of the pack team, especially the way he started this season thus far, it's going to be heartbreaking. If I just feel like he deserves a good car after having to race the whole season.
I could easily see Carlos without a seat next year, because the way he's been handling these contract negotiations, it's risky. He's wanting that Red Bull seat, and he's banking on Checo having a bit of a Mardy in Miami, and then Ricciardo and Tsunoda, instead of them looking to Red Bull, they're looking inwards to try and keep their own seats for next year. And I don't think after what Ricciardo did and getting 5 points, I'm thinking, what? That should have been enough to stave off things. I thought that should have been enough.
So a question just came in that's going to be a blending of worlds here. So I'm going to throw this up here. Characters you voiced, which one do you feel would be able to be a successful F1 driver? I have my opinions on basically anyone within the Dragon Ball universe. Apologies for this one, but what do you think?
I think Piccolo, obviously. He's a little bit slow, but, consistency is king.
I feel like Vegeta would have a little bit too much road rage, as we saw in GT.
Clearly, Kevin Magnussen, he's got Vegeta as a coach.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So basically, Goku probably wouldn't be your go-to in this one, based on again how we saw in that one episode. But okay, so Piccolo is your choice, probably the smartest choice here, but he was former God, so okay, makes sense. But anyway, we're gonna wrap this up in a couple of minutes. Any final thoughts, anything like that? Like I said, I've got the YouTube channel down below, but any other thoughts, other ways people can get in touch with you, that sort of thing?
Basically, all you have to do is just search for LawVS on YouTube and on Twitter, and you'll find me. I'm that guy what's on a ladder.
It works for you, though. You know what? You're on a ladder, but you know what? You talk F1. It's a unique stick that works.
Professional ladder from on top of a ladder, yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
A good life in this case. I don't know what your guidance counselors told you to be when you were a kid growing up, but you know what? You build a channel on YouTube. You get obviously your channel is fantastic. For something that hasn't been around that long, your view count, your sub count is spectacular. So you're growing like 400 subs a day, I think, on that channel right now.
Well, I mean, it's not just about the growth. It's basically I like doing it, and I like the community that's been fostered, and I always make sure to, and even in the Dragon Ball world, to not gatekeep, because you do get a lot of, especially with a lot of American fans coming in, a lot of the old school fans are like, they're not real fans. Drive to Survive fans are fake, and I'm like, no. Drive to Survive is a perfectly legitimate way of getting into the sport. I've got friends myself in real life where they got into it from Drive to Survive, and I'm like, hey, if we get more fans, it keeps the sport alive.
Sure.
And there's a different dynamic. Sports evolve, and it may not be as detailed and meticulous and engineer focused as before, but Carl, you're absolutely right. Everyone enters the fandom at their own time and in a different manner. So you got to respect that. And you'd be thinking, oh, cool. Another person who's gotten into F1. Well done. Welcome. I'm more than happy to have you. Nice.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm happy you're happy after, all the work that you did on the previous channels and everything with Dragon Ball. You've always had a love of F1. You said beforehand, before we started, that you were into F1 before Dragon Ball was even a thing for you, really. So, I'm glad for you in this case. And,
oh, JD, the last question you asked, why the ladder? Oh, it's to contain my lofty thoughts.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Are you not allowed to use the rest of the house for recording? Yeah.
I script in the main lounge, but you know, it's always really funny because my wife has to go past to like, you know, go to the bathroom or something, and she just sees my legs. And people ask, yes, it is me actually recording on a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a stage.
But also, I guess in some cases it gives you space away so you don't wake up the baby either. So.
Oh no, the baby is absolutely bomb-proof. As in, we grew up with a really loud dog, so obviously in the womb it was like completely fine.
I was never that lucky, but all right, sir. I know, like I said, you got family stuff to handle and everything like that, so I appreciate the time. Thank you as anything. Any other final thoughts, I think, before we wrap it up?
No, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, thank you. My privilege. And we'll be in touch on a lot of the stuff that basically we've talked about previously. And yeah, best to you in all the ways you can be.
You too, man.
Be good. Cheers. Bye.
Take care.